everybody, Bob Chick along with David Bay. We're back for another installment of TLR. David, this week was not short of activity in the IFBB. 3 pro shows, 1 big amateur show, Junior USA, almost said Junior Nationals. Junior Nationals coming up in Chicago a little bit later. But lots to cover. We're going to focus on the New York Pro, of course, the premier show with its long history and all that. And it did not disappoint our man, Sergio Oliva JR in the winner's circle. How about that one?
I gotta say, I was surprised. You called him as the winner early. I didn't have any doubts that he would do well. I just didn't see him winning with guys like De La Rosa, Juan Morel, and especially Akeem Williams in the lineup. But as we talk about all the time, it just depends who shows up the day of the show. And Sergio showed up in really sharp conditioning. I still think John De La Rosa was a little bit more complete, but when they're as close as they are and Sergio's conditioning was a little bit better, it was a well-deserved win for him, and happy to see a guy. It's so rare now that we see guys coming out and winning their pro debuts, and in that we talk about early 90s, Flex Wheeler, Lebroni, these guys were able to come out of the NPC and start winning shows right away. They didn't need all this, 2-3 years before they were contenders. So it's good to see that. It's good to see a young guy come out, obviously with a big name behind him, and get a good win and I guess you could say step out of the shadows. Obviously he's built a name for himself, but still a little bit of talk about his dad, and there always will be.
Yeah,
but it's good to see him get a win.
Absolutely. Well, listen, this was huge. I mean, this was huge for Sergio. I think it was huge for the sport. Like you say, we haven't seen somebody come in and win a pro debut in a while, so it's good to see some young blood coming in there and winning a show against some good talent. I mean, let's not dilute the fact that this was an impressive lineup, and you're right, on paper, he shouldn't win. Akeem, like I said, to me, the guy that was in the driver's seat, unfortunately, he came in and did exactly what we were fearing he was going to do, which was lack conditioning. He had a whole lot of size, but he didn't need more size. It was the lack of condition that threw him down in the lineup. But I want to focus more on the Sergio versus De La Rosa matchup. I thought it was a great matchup. I agree with you. I think they were close. If you look at the score sheets, David, Sergio is not winning that show in the prejudging. De La Rosa is.
Yeah, and I thought, like I said, from the pictures that I saw, and I always articulate that I'm just looking at pictures. And so I know when I was at the shows, I always made a very clear point to say it's different when you're in person. So I'm just going off of pictures. So the pictures that I saw, and I looked at a lot of them, different websites, try to get different lighting and stuff. I thought John was in first place, rightfully so, after the morning. Like I said, from pose to pose, I thought he was the more complete bodybuilder. His conditioning wasn't as sharp as Sergio's, but when we start talking about all around, I thought he looked a little bit better. I didn't see a lot of pictures from the night as far as comparisons between the two. The only thing I can assume is that Sergio, who was in better condition than John in the morning, got a little bit tighter, and then if John slipped a little bit at night, it could have been enough of a gap to cause the shift in placings. And anybody that's been to a show knows that there's a lot that can happen even when you're on stage. And so you have 4 or 5 hours between prejudging and when you're on stage at the night show. And the bodybuilders went early. I believe it was 212 and men's open were the first to go at prejudging and some of the last to go at the night show. So there was a pretty big gap in between. Sergio got better. John may have slipped a little bit. And like I said, we saw flip-flop in placings.
Well, let me ask you this now. Those two have two completely different, diametrically different styles. When I say styles, I'm talking about their presentation, choice of music, posing. John is very reserved, as everybody knows him. He's almost inherently shy. But he does great poses, but he's not the most charismatic guy on stage when it comes to display. Sergio is. He's the complete polar opposite of that when it comes to. If anything, he's actually gotten ridiculed for being a little too animated in his posing. And the nice thing is I got a chance to talk to him about that. And his response to me was interesting. He says, when I was an amateur, he says, I've always liked the old school. So obviously, I grew up with old school, being my dad, who he is. And I've always liked that style. Always wanted to bring that out. Problem is, in the NPC, you got a minute. He said, so what I would always try to do is put all these poses into a 1-minute routine. And I believe that because you and I have actually covered him. And the critique was that he doesn't hold any poses. I mean, he hits a pose for 1/10 of a second.
Yeah.
And he's on but you don't ever get a chance. He's just all over the place. Now he says, I got 3 minutes. I'm on a pro stage. I can finally put it together. I want to know, in your opinion, do you think presentation might have been the difference between him winning and coming back from being in a deficit at the prejudging?
I can't say as to whether that's what caused it, and I've been pretty adamant over the last 2 years when we started talking about the posing round at the Arnold
Right.
that I don't think that should have any effect. If we're going to award posing, I should say posing routines. Obviously, presentation during the judging
Correct.
portion and the finals where we know they can be rejudged. I think that's very important. As far as posing routines, I absolutely don't think that should be judged because I think bodybuilding is a sport where we're judging the attributes of people's physiques and not necessarily how artistic their posing routines get. That being said, John is a giant teddy bear. He's like that in person,
Yeah, right.
and unfortunately, to his fault, I think, and I've talked to him about this a few times, and not like John needs to be taking advice from me, but he's almost a little bit too nice of a guy on stage, where he hits his poses, and if people around him are getting a little bit aggressive, he just kind of, he goes with his flow. And I would like to see John be a little bit more aggressive on stage. It's not really his nature, and that's definitely not a bad thing. Like I said, he's a giant teddy bear, super nice guy. But I would like to see him be a little bit more aggressive on stage because I do believe when things get really, really close, and I mean nitpicky, obviously if one guy looks like crap and he's real aggressive and getting into it on stage, you're not going to give him a win just because, he's entertaining the crowd. But I think when it comes down to when it comes down to really close decisions, being aggressive on stage, taking control of the round, I think that helps. And again, I think it was as much of a condition issue as anything else. But I think it would definitely benefit John to be a little bit more aggressive on stage, both in prejudging and at the night shows. He seems to have a lot of fun in the pose downs. All of a sudden the pressure's off, the judging's done. Then he kind of lets loose, and you can see like this, this relaxation come about, and then he has a little bit more fun. I would like to see that, but I don't think actual, presentation had much of a difference, and I don't believe it should.
Well, here's another thing to ponder. For those who like the conspiracy theories out there, and we know there's more than a few of those in our game. Listen, Sergio went in the lion's den for this one. He goes into New York against John De La
Absolutely.
Rosa, against Juan Morel. You got the New York crew. Akeem Williams, I believe, was in New York for a while before he went out to work with the Camel crew and all
Absolutely.
that. So, listen, he's going right into a buzzsaw there. For those who think, well, hometown, they're going to go with, Juan, or if Victor had been in the show, or John. Listen, they didn't win. They called it the way they saw it. So you got to give credit where it's due. You got to dispel the conspiracy theories as they come up. Nobody brings that up when it doesn't happen. But I'll guarantee you, if De La Rosa had won, you'd be hearing the other side.
There was definitely some buzz about some New York favorites online, not in the way of first and second place, but in the way of third through sixth.
Right.
And I don't know that it was a New York favorite thing. And again, not being there, I can't really speak too much in detail. But from a lot of pictures that I did see, I will agree with some of the guys in that I would have liked to have seen Sasan Haradi, I believe that's how you say his last name, ahead of both Juan and Akeem. Now, the guy who got fourth, Luis Rodriguez or Ramirez, I thought looked incredible. And I would have liked to seen him and Sasan either flip-flop for third and fourth place. And I would have had Juan and Akeem in fifth and sixth. So there was some talk about, obviously when it comes down to first and second place, you can make those arguments. But, even going a little bit further on down the line, there was definitely some buzz about whether there was some New York favoritism going on there. And from what I saw from pictures, there's definitely an argument that can be made that Juan should have been a little bit lower and Sasan should have been a little bit higher.
Well, I got to agree with that. I did not have those guys as high as they were. Nothing against them. I thought the other guys were sharper.
Right.
I thought they had very good physiques, very complete, not missing too much. Represented themselves well as pros. The other guys to me were just off. Akeem was way off. I mean, that's an easy one. I mean, he's 15 pounds off. Big, like I say, got all the muscle, huge. But like I say, not in condition, and certainly not enough to justify, in my opinion, that position. Juan wasn't that far off, but you can tell he's got and I believe I've already seen it. He says he's going to shut it down now. I think this was one too many, as we talked about in the preview show. I think he should be very pleased that he ended up in third, because like I said, I agree with you on that one. Fourth, fifth, even fifth, sixth for those guys, I wouldn't have had any issue with.
Yeah, there was one thing that I also took notice of, and it kind of got excited about it, and that's how big and full John De La Rosa looked. John's one of these guys where earlier on in his career, people had talked about whether he was too small for the open and too short, and whether he should try to make 212. And I think John is really establishing himself as a very complete bodybuilder. I mean, his front double bicep and his back double bicep and his side chest shots, John is starting to get, in my opinion, to that level of mass where he can be winning shows on a regular basis and be a top 10, top 12 guy at the Olympia, a contender at Arnold Classics if he shows up razor sharp. I think John is getting to the point where there's not really a question anymore as to whether he can win. It's just you got to show up in this shape to win. So I was really impressed with John De La Rosa, especially his front double bicep. I mean, that shot is just getting cartoony for him. Oh, yeah. And so that was encouraging to see on John's end how much size that he's put on. He's had some time off, and we're going to see him coming up this next week in Toronto, and I think there's a real good chance he could get that win in that Olympia qualification.
Great move for John De La Rosa. Toronto is coming up. We'll preview that in just a few moments. This is a show he should win. I can't imagine coming off of this show that he won't dry it up a little bit, come down maybe another pound or two, and come in here. This could be the best conditioning and the best physique that we've seen from De La Rosa coming up this week in Toronto. Now, he is not without challenge here. And I believe you said somebody else had thrown their hat in the ring, David?
Well, Toronto, the Cal Pro, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The Cal Pro's got a pretty good lineup. But as far as Toronto, Johnny Jackson's going to be there. Paulo Almeida. There's a couple of guys there. But as far as people who are real contenders to John, if John can improve even just a little bit from how he looked in New York, I think it should be, and although I said I thought it should be a win for Akeem in New York, it should be a win for John in Toronto with this particular lineup. But you never know until you see the guy standing on stage.
Well, listen, Akeem is missing zero. I mean, he just needs conditioning. So if Akeem just brings it down, listen, he can show up in Toronto and you got a battle.
Akeem is signed up for California next week.
Okay, so he'll be in. Well, either way, listen, then he'll be in contention for Cali if he brings it down, because he's going to have some competition himself out there. Johnny Jackson is in a no-lose situation here. He is purely in this to make the rounds. It's his last year, as he's already stated. He's already qualified. I think this is a good move for Johnny, and I'll tell you why. All he can do is make some money. He can go in there, maybe even steal a win, David.
Yeah, the Toronto show, I think, is pretty good prize money. And if you look at this lineup right now, there's 10 guys. We might see another guy or two pop in before the end of the week. But right now, Johnny, I want to say he's a shoo-in for a top 3, top 4 position, which is going to be a pretty good paycheck for him at this show in Toronto. Sure. Ron Hachey always puts on a really good event there. So it's I don't want to say it's an easy paycheck. Obviously, he's put in his work, but it should be a good paycheck for him. So I agree 100%. I think it's really a win-win for Johnny. He's already qualified for the Olympia. If he loses to a guy like De La Rosa, with as good as De La Rosa looked in New York, nobody's going to look down upon Johnny. So I think it's a really smart move for him.
David, this will surprise you, but Sergio obviously wins. He's qualified for his first Olympia. You know my stance, and I'm always of the opinion that guys should absolutely relish any opportunity they have to get on the Olympia stage for the reasons that we've talked about many times. However, I'm actually taking the other stance on this one. I'm actually going against what I would normally give for advices, and I believe Sergio, much in the same way as Phil Heath did years ago. I put him in that classification. Listen, could he go to the Olympia and do okay? Yeah, I think he could. That said, I think he needs another year of good training. He'll easily qualify next year, for next year's Olympia by winning or having a chance to win whatever show he goes in. But I think he's in a position where I believe he's got to get his ducks in a row. He's got some talks going on right now with some companies on getting some sponsorship secured, which is very important, obviously, moving forwards. And he's got a lot of other things, business-wise that he's working on and things like that. So I'm going to go against my own advices, and I'm going to say that I think he should sit out this year, be the champ for a little bit, and then gear up for maybe the Arnold next year or one of the early shows.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree just in everything that you've explained. I agree. I think, he's got plenty of time. He's a young competitor. The only reason I'm going to disagree, and this is, kind of Peter's talk to Justin Compton
Sure.
and going back to discussions about Don Long is there's no guarantees as far as injuries and life happening. And if he's qualified and he can get on stage at the Mr. Olympia and has an opportunity to do it, and he's got ample time between now and September to take a little bit of a break, have some food, probably not grow too much, but to just take a little bit of a break, give his body a little bit of a break, and then get back on track for the Olympia. I think just for the experience that he should do it. Again, I agree with everything you're saying. He,
Sure.
he could definitely he's likely not going to be a top 10 guy at the Olympia with the lineup that we're looking at potentially having there. But you never know if you're going to get a second chance. And I think any bodybuilder's dream after turning pro, I mean, that's so many people's dream is just to turn pro, is to win a show. And then once you win a show, it's like, my God, if I could ever get on the Olympia stage, that would be, just a real dream come true. And so I think he takes that opportunity and relishes it and takes it, because you never know if you're going to have a second chance to get there. Obviously, I hope he has got plenty of chances to get there and has a healthy career and grows in the way that we know he can. But you never know. That's kind of my thing, is you never know what's going to happen. So if you get a chance to be in the Olympia stage, take it.
Well, we're going to get a chance to talk to Sergio this next week as he makes his way back home to Cali as he enjoys that win in New York. So congratulations to Sergio.
And the other thing I will say quickly is, when you have a guy like Dexter Jackson who's pushing possibly retiring soon, and you have an opportunity to he's not going to stand next to Dexter on the Olympia stage, but to be in a press conference with Dexter Jackson, to say he competed at the same Olympia as Dexter Jackson, that's something that you have to look at too, is when you have an icon in bodybuilding and you have an opportunity to compete with them. I think that sometimes plays into, look, anybody who's been bodybuilding for the last 20 years is looked up to Dexter Jackson. And when you have an opportunity to be in the same show as them, especially on an Olympia stage, I think that's a big deal.
Well, and the counter argument to that, of course, is, listen, he may be on that Olympia stage with Dexter for the next 10 years, the way Dexter's going. So there's no slow.
I'm not saying this is Dexter's last year. Yeah. I'm just saying, if he, let's say he qualifies this year, maybe he doesn't next, and then the year after he does, maybe Dexter's done by then.
He'll still be around. He ain't going nowhere.
So.
Well, before we move on to the other shows, David, Toronto and Cali, most notably coming up this week, there was another show going on in New York, and that, of course, was the 212. And I'm sorry, David, I'm looking through my notes here. I can't seem to find it.
Who
won the 212 again?
Who the winner was? Ronnie Raquel, your prediction. I said you were nuts. I didn't think. I've seen Ronnie at his last couple of shows, and his physique has looked a little tired at the last few shows. I don't know what he did, but he was on. He nailed it.
Listen, you're going to find soon, my friend, as my wife has in all these years, I may not always be right, but I'm never wrong.
I'm never wrong.
So, listen.
Well, we did see Milan Sadek a little bit off from where he was conditioning-wise in Orlando. So that hurt him.
And let me tell you something. That's the only reason Milan loses. Because did you see the pics from that? Milan is absolutely huge.
Yeah, he's a
212 guy.
He's a big 212 guy.
Yeah,
it was cool to see Ronnie win. You had Craig Richardson in that top 5. I will say this: my prediction of Guy Cisternino and Sean Clarita, obviously in second place. Big jump for Sean, not necessarily in placing because he's done well at that show before, but as far as size improvements, Guy Cisternino, this is probably his worst showing ever. And when I saw pictures, I was like, all right, something's wrong. And not even like he's off or his body's
something's
tired.
Wrong.
Something's wrong. Not even like food poisoning. Something's wrong. Something's really wrong here. And he posted pictures like the day after with huge like purple. It almost looked like welts. Like the type of purple your skin turns when you tear a muscle.
Yeah. Just
like all over his back, on his arms. And I don't know. There was people talking, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Guy. There was people talking about whether it was an allergic reaction to a tanning product or whether it was some sort of other allergic reaction. But whatever happened, it was real funky looking, not good at all. And for this one, I'm going to give Guy a little bit of a pass. Like I said, he's somebody who we've seen up and down. I've seen him really dry. I've seen him a little bit off, but never like this off. So when you see somebody that's relatively consistent this far off, you gotta question something really went wrong, and it did. I mean, the pictures
Yeah,
were. I don't know that I've ever even seen anything like that before.
I
It
never
wasn't just like
have.
hives. It wasn't like allergic reaction hives. It was just like huge purple welts.
No, he
It was
turned purple
nasty.
like the chicken Willy Wonka's Charlie chocolate factory and all that stuff. He actually turned purple.
Yeah,
I
for
don't
sure.
know what happened, and again, I
Yeah, I
hey,
have no
listen.
idea.
We've seen Guy, off a little bit, but he's a perennial contender, and I know,
Yeah,
he could have
yeah.
waltzed in here and been up there for that title. But I will say this: I don't know what went wrong. I mean, I'm sure Guy's trying to find out what went wrong with that, and that's some serious stuff going on. I don't know if it's something he. I'm going to use this as a public service announcement time for anybody else out there. And this is not to say that Guy did this, but it just brings it to mind. Don't ever try something new before a show. Not a carb that you haven't eaten, not a tanning dye that you've never used before. Don't change anything the week of the show. And I see this, David. I've seen this 1,000 times over the years. Well, yeah,
Guilty.
it's listen, we've all been there in various forms or ways, but it's like that is the stupidest thing in the world you can do as a competitor is to change up something at the end. Well, I just decided I might try, this other tanning stuff that I've never used before. Well, don't do it now.
Even certain foods with certain levels
Yeah.
of sodium and artificial this or artificial that, and I mean, I think we've all been there where you eat something different the day before because you think it's going to fill you out, and you got clothes on, and all of a sudden you peel off the next morning, and you look like you're holding 30 pounds of water,
Oh,
and you
yeah.
want to cry because you put in 16 weeks of hard work.
Well,
Been there,
listen,
but yeah,
look,
don't try switching stuff up that close to a show.
well,
It's never good.
and I'm talking even dietary, and that's most of it because most of the people that you see, 90% of people will say that they look better before the show than they did at the show.
Of
And that's
course,
for a good reason, and it is because 90% of the people carb up on stuff that they haven't eaten in
they haven't
12
eaten.
weeks.
Yeah.
They start adding all these carbs in. Listen, stick with what got you to the dance. The minute you start throwing in an oddball food, it's going to be a wrench into your system. I don't keep if it's the cleanest food in the world. You can go from white rice to brown rice, whatever.
Yeah, if you haven't eaten it in 16 weeks, and all of a sudden you think 3 days before a show it's going to magically change your physique,
No. Oh,
it's,
it's gonna change it, but not usually in the best way that you're looking for. But so
I
anyway,
did. I was also sticking with the New York Pro. I was very proud of myself. I did. I gave a 1-2 prediction,
yeah,
and I had a one guy margin of error of Breon Ansley and George Peterson for classic physique. Those guys were 1 and 2. George Peterson, I figured from some of the videos that I saw, incredible back, a lot of muscle. He doesn't, when you put him up against the rest of the lineup, he doesn't quite flow as well as I thought he would. So the Olympia talk I had about George, this is me backing out of that talk. I think Breon Ansley looked absolutely fantastic. George is going to have to taper in his waist a little bit to be able to hang with guys like Danny, Breon,
sure.
Robert Timms, your top guys. So George looked really good. I would actually, from what I saw from the pictures, and I'm certainly not in any position to tell people where they should go. I think George would probably be better off focusing on being a 212 bodybuilder than a classic physique. Because when I look at his lines and stuff, he's always going to do well, but I don't see him being a top Olympia contender unless he can shave off his obliques a little bit, work on his lines.
Yeah.
And Breon really exposed that. And even the guys who got third, fourth, and fifth, especially the guy who got third place, I forget his name, not as much mass and not as lean as George was, but structurally, I think he beat George, and so a good classic lineup there as well. So a good show all around. We were a little worried about names and numbers early on for the New York because there wasn't a ton
Sure.
of buzz about it, but it ended up being a pretty kick-ass show as we hoped it would be.
Well, another Bob Stradamus moment happening right now, David, as I peer into my bowl of soup once again. And I'm telling you this right now. Within the next year or two, Classic is brand new, as everybody knows. Okay, well, we've had 1 year. It takes 3 years, in my opinion, and I've seen this with every Classic we've instituted. Into the third year is about when to start seeking its level. Now, that said, I think what you're going to start to see is more classically structured physiques coming to the table rather than guys just going in the class that do this and they think they're a classic physique. And it's like, look,
God.
a classic physique is certain proportions it's not just putting your hands up in the air and looking like you're
Absolutely.
performing a Frank Zane impersonation. Big difference.
I have a love-hate relationship with the classic physique division. I love it because we are starting to see some of these crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
you get some of these guys that, like Breon Ansley. Like I said, a lot of people thought he could have won the Olympia. Tiny waist, incredible proportions, great muscle bellies, and we're starting to see that. We're really starting to see some of these genetic freaks pop out in the classic, which is what you're kind of referring to.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, what we're seeing a lot, and this is at a local level, but we're seeing it even at a national level for guys who qualify at smaller shows. Guys, just because you fit in a height weight category does not mean you have classic structure.
Exactly.
Even if that's the case, and you are going to look, nobody needs to practice posing more than the classic physique competitors. And I'm telling you guys, so many of you guys, even at the professional level, NPC national level, it's definitely getting better at the professional level. Some of the posers in the classic physique division are phenomenal. Your Santiago Aragons, you have Durham Charles, who's got a different style of posing. Obviously, Danny Hester, phenomenal posing. But like you said, guys, if you're hitting a front double bicep like this, just popping one hand open does not make it a classic physique pose.
No.
You know what I'm saying? And you get guys who are doing like these, guys, practice. You know what bothers me the most out of anything? When you're doing an archer pose, it's like there should be a rod going through one bicep all the way to the other arm. My right bicep should this. Nothing angers me more when I see this, and then this arm is like up like this. Or down.
And listen, David, when you do that,
the worst.
And listen, when you do that pose, I want you to look in the direction of that you're pointing. You know, so don't
little
hide
guys,
away.
They hide away, and the big guy.
Yeah, see, you were hiding away there a little bit, so don't ever do that. So, hey, listen, big shout out to Sean Clarita, the giant killer, the new giant killer.
He's transitioning, and we talked about this. Sean Clarita, and it's an interesting transition, and some people like it and some people aren't crazy about it. Sean Clarita is transitioning from a miniature trophy or I should say a large trophy on stage to he's borderline freaky now. And neither are a bad thing. No. You know, I think the last couple of years we've seen him on stage and you're like, oh, that's a 5'10" physique. He's he's top in the industry. But now he put on 12 pounds of muscle, and it shows. You see his side poses, the front to back, and his quad and hamstring is getting nuts. So I thought it was really cool. Some guys were being a little hard on him, saying he's lost some of his lines. I think he still has good lines, but he's starting to get freaky kind of muscle on his frame, and I thought it was really cool. Even though he got second place, didn't get the win, I thought it was another just giant step forward for Sean Clarita. And this is a guy year after year after year just keeps getting better, and it seems like sky's the limit for Sean.
Well, here's the bottom line. Dexter Jackson, okay, started out as a bantamweight.
Yeah.
Obviously went as far as to winning the Mr. Olympia, and obviously continues as we talk about into his last 15 years of his career. So he'll be retiring when he's 63 or so. But listen, he was a bantamweight, man. He put on 100 pounds from when he first started.
Clarita's on his way there, man. I think he was like 120 or something. He's pushing 180 now, and man, I tell you what, like I said, I thought it was cool. Did he lose a little bit of his lines? Sure, but Clarita's starting to look freaky, and I like it.
Well, I don't know where he's going next, but like I say, any show he goes into, he's going to be a threat.
He's not like a second call out if the first call out's really good. Maybe if it's a bad lineup, then maybe he can get first call out. Right. I think he's really leapfrogged into he's a first call out guy.
Well, if he's in Toronto, he might be the first guy, and to finish and the last man standing. So we'll keep a lookout for Sean. But David, I want to move on to the two shows coming up. We got Toronto and we've got Cali. Big shout out to our boys in Cali. Of course, the home of the captain, John Lindsay. Muscle contest.
Big show.
Tamer El-Gindi, who I just spent the weekend with, actually, and his brother Tarek, they were out in Orlando. Obviously, we had the Orlando Europa, which was a huge, huge success. Big congrats there to everybody that's involved. It's a huge team that Ed and Betty Pariso put together. Scott Templeton and, of course, our good friend Eric Hillman always there. And they do a great job. Orlando was as big as Dallas, which means Dallas coming up in 4 weeks is going to be off the chain. But I want to focus on Toronto and Cali. What do you see on the Cali lineup now? It looked pretty good when I last checked it out.
California's got 19 guys. So, and it's an interesting mix because we got some of the younger guys, Eddie Bracamontes, on Wen, who's really young, but we got Gerald Williams, Akeem Williams. The guy who I think, and this is going to be my dark horse pick, is Charles Griffin. I saw him guest pose in Wisconsin a few weeks ago. Huge size games. He got fifth last year at his pro debut, and I saw a few update pictures. Charles looks really good. He's a very complete bodybuilder. Akeem should be the favorite here, and he should dominate this lineup. But the way we saw him last week, I don't think a week is enough time for him to really tighten up as much.
You know what though, David? You would be surprised. Listen, people got to understand something. When you're 300 pounds, which he is, okay, he's big Ramy size. He's that big. All right.
Akeem's like a legit freak.
Oh yeah. But for legitimate, like he's a 300-pound guy. Okay, you're gonna holding 15 pounds of water. Now this is just like we saw with Big Ramy earlier in his career. Holding 15 pounds of water is not that strange. I mean, listen, it's all relative. If you're a 180-pound guy, you're holding 2 or 3 pounds. He's 300 pounds. He could be holding 12 to 15 pounds of water. I think he's got enough time. I think he's got 7 days. Listen, he wrung out that a little bit at the show. If he just keeps it going, there's no question in my mind he can make one of those transformations that everybody's going to sit there with their eyes open going, oh my God, I can't believe that he made that big of a change.
Sasan is also going to be there. And like I said, a lot of people had Sasan ahead of Akeem. Now, 100% Akeem, I think, beats 100% Sasan.
Yeah.
Crowd favorite, John Meadows is going to be there. John.
Good for John.
as always, ridiculous conditioning. We've seen John do the 212 a handful of times. Looks like he's going to be jumping into the open. To me, I think it's a good move for John. John is one of these guys where he's super shredded and grainy at 230 as he is at 212. And I know here's a guy who really works his ass off, 24/7 all year round. But he had to really, get crazy to get down to 212. So it's good seeing him in the open. But
Who else we got, David?
Big Will Harris, Eddie Bracamontes could do well as well. If I gotta do a first call out. If I gotta do a first call out, who am I going with? Eddie, Charles, Sasan, Akeem Williams. Boy, I don't know.
Well, let me give you the fifth guy, okay? On Win, okay? Now, for those who don't know,
the best hair in the IFBB.
Best hair, hands down. But for those who aren't familiar, it's AN on, and it's Win, the NG,
NGYE,
right?
Yeah.
So, by the way, it took me a long time announcing people to actually get that right because you want to say Nugent or something, but it's not. But anyway. This kid has, and I call him a kid, but he's been around for 10 years already in the IFBB. He's got everything. He's got a beautiful physique.
Conditioning.
Yeah, except conditioning. If this kid ever hits it right,
he'll be winning, yeah.
He could win this show. I mean, barring Akeem is
absolutely
not 100%. Yeah, listen, he's not going to beat Akeem. I don't care what happens if he's close. But let's just say everybody was off a little bit. You know what I mean? Or just, listen, other than Akeem, I honestly believe that An could beat everybody in that lineup if he can just get his conditioning right. He's got a beautiful physique. He's missing nothing. He's got great width. His shoulders are huge. And I don't mean just his shoulder in terms of muscle. I'm talking his actual width.
Always. Yeah.
Listen, big shout out to An out there. I hope you're watching this. Dial it down, man. Just don't care about the size. Don't care about the muscle. Listen, you got all that stuff, bro. Just get the conditioning on point, and you will be in the top 3. I can guarantee it.
I'm going to give I don't like picking winners. Maybe I should be a little bit more bold. I'm going to give myself a one-man margin of error again.
Okay.
I'm going with Charles Griffin or Sasan. That's who I'm picking for my open.
I'm going to go with my man Akeem. I'm going to say he's going to shock the world, that you're going to watch a transformation that most people are not going to believe is possible. But I'm telling you, when you're 300 and you drop 10, 12 pounds, 13 pounds of water, nobody's touching this guy, okay? He will be out there.
I won't. Look, I'm not going to argue with you that.
No, you probably should never argue.
At their bat, it's a losing. You're going to lose.
Yeah, you're going to lose. I mean, there's just no way about it.
You can't even make that argument. but you still have to show up in shape. But
Yes, you do. No question. You
there's,
gotta.
I'm trying to see who's all in. The Toronto Open. We talked about that. John De La Rosa. Toronto 212. Ronnie Raquel's going to be there again. The lineup. There's 12 guys. There's not really any additions to the lineup that I think. There's Wojtek Kortinski from the Czech Republic, a guy who looks good. But if Ronnie looks the way he did in New York, I think he's going to win. And then the other division of interest in Toronto, all divisions are of interest, divisions of interest. Classic physique, Chris Bumstead, who won in Pittsburgh.
Your boy.
Canadian kid, he's already got his Olympia qualification, but I know he wants to compete in his hometown, especially after getting a win in Pittsburgh. He's got to be going in with full confidence. He looks every bit as good as he did in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Santiago Aragon's going to be there.
You know what? I ran into Sante, and he told me he was going in, so I'll see him this week. I actually ran into him over the weekend.
Yeah, if you're in Toronto and you can get to the show for any portion of the show, get there for Classic Physique, because between Bumstead, Santiago Aragon, Durham Charles, you're going to see some really cool posing routines.
We got the you got the return of Durham?
Yeah, but it's interesting because Bumstead's upper body isn't as good as his lower body. I mean, look, Bumstead's lower body is ridiculous.
Clearly.
And Durham's the exact opposite. So Durham and Chris have two interestingly different physiques. With Durham's upper body being going to be significantly more dominant than Chris's. Santiago, a very well-balanced competitor. AJ Shakuri, a guy who was men's physique for a while that actually transferred over to Classic. Yep. He's a Canadian guy. Yep. I really liked AJ as a men's physique guy. He was one of the few men's physique guys I really liked, and he was a little bit too muscular, and he was, getting down scored a little bit, but he'll be up there too, so he'll probably be in the top 5. But if I had to pick a winner there, I'm going to go with Bumstead getting his second win of the year in his hometown.
He's hard to pick against, really. I mean, listen, he needs a little bit more upper body, but I got to be honest, man, the kid is damn good. He's put together. Now, he does, in my opinion, have that classic physique, and he combines it with
his waist is this big, and his quads are bigger than his waist, I bet. And that's really... Yeah. I bet if you put a tape to him, his quads are bigger than his waist, and that is incredibly rare in any physique sport today. I don't care whether we're talking bodybuilding, 212 classic. His legs are bigger than his waist, and I'll bet a lot on that. And that's rare. And his upper body's good. It's not like it's just non-existent where he's just all wheels. But I think it should be a good show for Chris and probably a win.
Listen, I went against you on the last one. I picked my man Lee Banks. By the way, Lee was, I think, 4th, actually, this past weekend in New York. So he continues to impress. I tell you, he hasn't been out of the top 5 yet.
He's been top 5 all the time. So he's definitely carving out a path for him on the way to the Olympia. So
absolutely. So well done, Lee Banks, and I'm sure we'll see him in a few more shows. The nice thing about these guys is, they are not shy about getting out there and competing. Chris Bumstead could have easily taken this one off, as obviously he's qualified, but I like to see these guys competing 2, 3, 4 times. It supports the sport, and listen, let's face it, you ain't making fans sitting home. These guys tend to forget, I think, sometimes, David, that the business of bodybuilding is more than just competing. It's building a fan base. It's building your own brand. It's getting out there. It's shaking hands. It's
interesting. Maybe we can touch upon this for another show. We'll have but just the topic that the conditioning that the classic physique guys have to get into, arguably every bit as lean as the bodybuilders.
Sure.
But most of the classic physique guys don't seem to have issues peaking multiple times throughout the course of the year.
That's because they stay leaner. It's that simple. Which bodybuilders should do.
So it's like, we look at the bodybuilding division. There was a good discussion on the Facebook group Geared Up as to whether the bodybuilders are shooting themselves in the ass for not showing up in shape. The 212 guys are showing up in shape. The classic physique guys are showing up in shape. Yeah. Men's physique guys, some of these kids are showing up shredded. Granted, they haven't seen a squat rack. A lot of them have, though. I'm not gonna go there. A lot of these men's physique guys do have good legs, but it's like everybody's showing up shredded except the bodybuilders.
Because the envelope has been pushed, David. It's been pushed a lot over the years. The guys today have a lot more muscle. If you remember the early interviews with Kevin Lavroni, after the Olympia, and I asked him straight out. I'm like, what did you think when you were backstage? You were back in the pump up room, and the first thing out of his mouth, which was a very honest answer, was, "Holy shit, these guys are huge.
They're big.
Yeah, they're a lot." He said they were a lot.
You got Ruley, you got McCarver back there. I mean, granted, that's a we forget last year's Olympia was a big lineup as far as bodies. Obviously, Phil Heath is not as scale as heavy as everybody, but proportion wise, he's huge.
Yeah.
There was some big boys on the Olympia stage last year.
Yeah, and that can't now listen, in the overall scheme of things, I know it doesn't really make any difference if they're not in condition. Personally, I think the guys could be leaner in the off season. I don't think it's necessary to go up as high as a lot of them are. For some odd reason, still to this day, achieving this pinnacle of 300 pounds just seems to be the brass ring of bodybuilding. But it's not good, and it doesn't elicit a bigger physique when you're in contest shape. I think it's still that practice
just means you have
goes
more
back
weight
to
to
the
lose.
50s.
Sucks.
It goes back to the 50s.
I got caught up in that. I got caught up in that whole game. Early 2000s, mid 2000s. Wisconsin guy. Everybody's trying to be like Art Atwood and be 320 pounds. I got the 305, and when it came time to diet that weight off, in my head, I thought I was going to be 250 on stage.
Well, that's the rub.
What a joke that was. I wish I could go back 10 years and kick myself in the ass 200 or 300 times. I figured if I was 305 off season, that was going to transmit to a good 250, 255 on stage. I was going to be a dominant super heavyweight. Not even close.
This is I've seen this for years, a lot of years. Bodybuilders have their own internal calculator. So they figure I'm 300, can't have more than 40 pounds to lose. I mean,
To a T what I thought. I could probably be on stage 260, and then if I show a shred, I'll be 250.
Sure. Now, and when you get done, you're 218. Going, what the hell?
That's the goal where I probably should have been.
Yeah. So no, it doesn't work like that. It's not relative like that. The smart ones get it very early in their career, and they don't make that mistake. Listen, you can make gains without putting on 50 pounds of fat in the off season. This is an old school 1950s, 1960s technique. And bulking up first, and that was kind of considered the way to go. Well, a lot has changed since the 50s, guys. So, word of the wise, keep it lean.
The expectation for conditioning. Now, obviously, you had some great physiques in the 50s, but you take a big Bill Pearl or a Reg Park on stage. Their conditioning wise is what a lot of guys are off season now. I mean, no disrespect to those guys. That was the standard for the era, and they competed to what was being looked for. So I don't ever. Those guys are idols and icons. So I don't want to come across.
But the difference.
Expectation for conditioning was so much less back then that you could put on weight and peel it off easier because you weren't getting up to 3% body fat.
What the difference is, David? Listen, I got all those magazines. You know me, I've got tons of memorabilia and all that stuff, and old magazines with Bill Pearl and all those guys. They have articles about them bulking because obviously it was a big topic back then. It was bulking to gain muscle, gain size, and get your strength up there. When these guys were bulking, they were 250, 260. Right. Maybe, at best. I mean, rarely did you get a guy.
It's a different era.
It's a different day. Now you got guys bulking into the 300s at the same height these guys were. So, no, it has changed, not for the better in that. And that's a whole future topic that we could discuss because we are running out of time, my friend. But
yes, sir.
Lots to go over here. Like New York Pro in the books. Orlando, like I said, sellout crowd and a huge thing. Got 3 divisions represented there, so 3 more people going to the Olympia. And of course, Shreveport, Louisiana was on the books. Our good friend Robert Superman Blount down there putting on the Optimum Classic once again. I heard it was a great show. Saw some footage. Looks like they bumped up the production value pretty good. So congratulations to Robert out there. But we are onward and upward, David. Toronto this week coming up, and like I said, Cali. Tamer El-Gindi and his crew out there, Muscle Contest. They were doing an excellent job of putting on their shows, of course, throughout the year. And of course, always a big shout out to the captain, John Lindsay, one of my closest friends in the industry, still continuing to do what he does out there. So that's going to wrap it up for today.
And don't forget, guys, on like us, follow us on the Last Rep Facebook page. I'm going to have we're going to have competitor lists going up. We're going to do updates on the call-outs, updates on the placings, photos of the winners, all that stuff. So we got the Last Rep Facebook page up and running. We're going to start doing a lot of updates there and get stuff going over there as well, as far as, like I said, contest updates and pictures and lists and everything else, and some paparazzi pictures and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
So
we got.
make sure-
Yeah, we are actually catching up with the times here, so we've got lots of new stuff coming. We've got lots
That's
of.
getting
We've got
there.
some new people on the production team, David. So we look for some big changes coming. We got the site.
Oh, my
We've got
Anna.
Facebook. We got people.
Right. We got people.
We got people. So, all right, David.
Alrighty.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this installment of The Last Rep for David Bay. I'm Bob Chick. We're out.